Hello friends, this is Tisha from Meadows and Mortar by Tisha, and I have that super cute spring thrift flip that you guys saw there. So what I did is I started off with this cute little cookie jar. This was a ceramic piece, so it needed a good bonding primer on it, so I used Paint Couture's Sure Prep bonding primer, and it's in white. That made sure to give me really good adhesion and a good base for my paint to stick to. So I'm starting off with Farmhouse Linen, and then I'm going to go into Spanish Sunrise. And both of those are from Paint Couture Paint. The Farmhouse Linen is this really creamy white color. It is beautiful as a base. It's not something that I would paint a whole piece with. That's just my personal preference though. So that's why I pulled in the Spanish Sunrise to go in with it. It is just the most perfect little spring color. It's just a pop of color that's going to go with this beautifully. I didn't want a whole lot of the yellow. I just wanted it to be a very pretty little accent color. I just wanted it to kind of meld into the background. So you saw I didn't put very much of the yellow at the bottom, and then I take it and I just spread it around, and then I bring it up towards that Farmhouse Linen, and then I get my Farmhouse Linen and then I drag it back down. So what I'm trying to do is just blur the lines between the two colors. You want there to be a gradient, but you don't want there to be an actual like stop and start. You don't want to look at it and be like, oh, the yellow starts here and it stops here. You want it to be cohesive and just kind of gradually go into one another. So once that I finish that on that first side, then I'm going to do the same exact thing to all of the other sides. Now, if you are somebody that likes DIY projects or painting furniture, then I ask that you just like, comment, and subscribe to my page. Hopefully you'll find some content that you like. Hopefully I will be adding more stuff soon. Now I've grabbed the top of the cookie jar and I'm just taking straight up Spanish Sunrise to this. So I'm taking it over the top, trying to make sure that I get in the grooves underneath, and then I'm going to finish going all around the edges of it. Now I tend to paint with a chalk style paint, but this one is actually from their acrylic mineral line, and this is a beautiful, beautiful paint. So whenever you put it on, you don't have to worry about brush strokes too much. It evens itself out nicely. I really like the way that it feels. With a lot of these all-in-one paints, the feel of them just feels funny, like, I don't know, like they're fake, or I'm not sure, but I really like the way that this feels. Here you'll see that I'm pouring some resin molds. I'm using a quick set resin, and this is a 1-to-1 ratio. So I just had 2 little measuring cups. I filled each of them up, one with part A, one with part B. Then I have these little silicone things that I stir them up in. So you just make sure that you get all of the material out of your little cups, and then you mix them together with a little popsicle stick. So I think the back of the product says that you're supposed to mix them for up to 30 seconds. But if you look at it, there's a color change in it. Once that it gets to a nice clear color, then you know that it's time for you to be able to pour it. You do have to move quite quickly with this though. Once that you get it all mixed up and you go to pour it, it's only 10 minutes until it sets completely. So you only have about 2 minutes of working time with this. So I'm using 2 different molds. Both of these are from Redesign with Prima. This first one is called Lysandra. That's the one that has the little picture frames. And this other one is from the new Spring 2025 release. I don't know what the name of it is. It's the one with the bunnies. It's super cute. So there's a daddy, a mommy, and a little girl bunny on there. There's some eggs and some flowers. The only thing that I'm going to be using is the mommy, the daddy, the little girl, and then some of the eggs on this particular piece. All I'm doing right here is I'm just taking a 220 grit of sandpaper and I'm just lightly going over this. I wouldn't even call it a sand. It's really just rubbing across it. You're just getting the nubs out of the paint. I was just trying to get as smooth of a surface as possible to be able to start prepping for my stencil. So I used Duck Egg and Spanish Sunrise on this, and you'll notice that I'm using the same paintbrush that I used whenever I put on that Spanish Sunrise. So whenever it's mixed with that Duck Egg blue, it sort of makes this green color. And I do have greens that I could use, like Spanish Moss would have been a perfect combination for this, but I figured I already had yellow, and then I was going to be getting the Duck Egg blue anyways to blend in, so I just made my own green instead of having to pull out another color at this point. So just like before, whenever I was doing the farmhouse linen and the Spanish sunrise, I'm just wanting to make a gradient. So the very bottom of it, I'm wanting to be that duck egg blue, and then it's going to go up more towards the green color that I made with the blue and the yellow. This doesn't need to be perfect. This is going to be just a background piece behind my bunnies. And since I have the yellow and the white behind it, it's going to make a nice little visual effect going from the green to the blue, and then on the back behind that part, it's going to be the yellow going up to the white. So I just thought that this was just a really pretty accent. It does a nice little play on the eyes. Anytime that I get the opportunity to do layers, that's what I like to do. That is my jam. Layers and texture are my go-to. I just think that they're so pretty. It adds so much dimension and interest to a piece. Doesn't matter how big or how small of a piece. It seems like the more that you layer and blend, just the more interesting that it is and the more beautiful it is to me. You just want to make sure that you're using the same gradient pattern on all 4 sides. I want to make sure that my technique is the same. I'm wanting this to look pretty symmetrical on all 4 sides so that my bunnies can really take center stage. Speaking of bunnies, look how cute my little bunny is. So I had this idea that I was going to put her inside of a picture frame, but the frame that I was going to use from that mold, she was a little bit too big for. And I could have just layered her on top of it, but I waited probably like 45 minutes after I demolded to put her in, so I couldn't really conform her at that point. So I chopped her legs off. She was still a little bit too tall, so then I had to chop the bottom of her skirt off. And then look, she fits perfectly. So for the base of the back of all of my bunnies, I wanted to use a brown color, so I used Pine Cone from Paint Couture Paint. This is in the chalk style line, but you could use either one, whatever you like. But I just used a small brush, and then you can see that I'm kind of like stippling it on there, and that is so that I can make sure that I'm getting inside of all of the cracks and crevices. And the same thing with these 2 picture frames, because this has a lot of intricate details inside of there. I want to make sure that I'm getting the darkened areas inside of all of those recesses. And if you didn't want to brush on something, you could easily just use a spray paint for this part right here. That would make sure that it gets into all of your details very nicely, and it's just going to be the background color anyways, and there are plenty of beautiful colors out there in spray paints. Once that I had my base coat on, I used a bunch of different colors. Now I'm using Paint Couture Paint here. I'm using greens and pinks and yellows, but you can use whatever you want to dress up your bunnies. And for my frames, I didn't get full coverage. I just used that dusty pink color on there, just kind of skimmed the surface of them to give them a warm weathered look. Now I'm just using some Tightbond Quick and Thick to adhere my molds to this piece. Tightbond Quick and Thick is very good. It's going to be very secure. It's not going to come off of there. I actually use this on my furniture pieces as well, so this isn't just something that you can use for a decor item. You can get it at any hardware store. You can get it at Walmart. Just wherever you pick up your normal glue will probably have Tightbond Quick and Thick. You'll see that I'm adding tape just to secure them to the piece a little bit better, because where this has 4 sides, I am going to have to flip some of the pieces upside down to be able to get to the other side of it. Now, if this were just something that I was going to be sitting straight up and not flipping upside down, I probably wouldn't have to use the tape. But in this situation, I felt like the painter's tape was my safest bet. If you've made it this far with me, I just want to say thank you, and I really do appreciate you watching my video. If you would like to like and subscribe, that would be fantastic. If you don't want to do that, but you would like to comment whether you love or hate this project, that'll be fine too. Even the negative stuff is still good. It'll still help my algorithm out. I felt like the top part of it was just a little bit too clean cut. I felt like it needed something to sort of grunge it up a little bit, because the bottom of it looked a little more vintage and a little more rustic than the top part did. So I'm just using a little bit of vintage moss. This is from Paint Couture Paint also. This is a very pretty green color, and I'm just using it to kind of lightly dust around the edges of everything. And this actually looks very, very similar to that green color that I made with my blue and my green earlier on the piece. Then I take it and I just lightly dust it across those scalloped edges, and it really does make it pop. You wouldn't think that something this small would really make that big of a difference, but it just defines those lines and edges a little bit, and it really does make this piece come together. And you can see I'm going around the edges and corners of it too, and that's just sort of making like a little vignette around it. So it sort of brings your eyes into where the actual bunnies are. So this is aged brass. This is a gilding wax that you can get from Redesign with Prima. And I just take it on my finger and I'm just putting it across the top parts. This just helps accentuate all of those little details that are inside of there. And then I take and I just rub a little more on the flat parts just to kind of make it look like it is an old worn picture frame. After that, I decided that the bunny needed a little bit more detail, so I actually got an artist brush out. I'm using that same gilding wax, and I'm just kind of accentuating some ruffles and some buttons, going around where her little scarf is, just to kind of accent those areas and be able to pull light to them. Now on little Papa Bunny here, I am just putting it on his buttons, and then I'm wanting to kind of accentuate those creases in his clothes, so you'll see me just kind of dust over the very high points so it looks sort of like the light is hitting it. It looks like it's vintage and it's gilded, but I'm also trying to make it to where the light sort of does a play on the molding itself, so it really looks like it's very three-dimensional. It doesn't look like it's just something that's stuck on this little piece of ceramic. And then I just keep lightly dusting, just hitting any of the high points on any of the clothing, and then it's done. So this is my final piece. I think that this is a beautiful, beautiful Easter gift for somebody. I think this would be perfect just sitting out on somebody's table with or without the top. It could actually have cookies in it. It would be beautiful even if it was like a vase to hold flowers in. Really, the possibilities are endless with this one. And thank you guys so much for watching. I hope to see you all soon. Thanks.